Good evening. We'll call the September 22nd, 2025 special meeting of the Council Appointed Officer Committee meeting to order, if the clerk can call the roll.
Of course. Vice Mayor Vinker. Here. Chair Stone.
Here.
Councilmember Burt. For the record, all present.
Thank you. Let's go to public comments for anything that is not on the agenda.
We have
speakers.
One request to speak.
Okay, do 3 minutes.
Are you speaking to? So we have 2 requests to speak. Sventi. You can take a seat.
Sven Thiessen, 19-year Palo Alto resident, chemical engineer, ex-Peninsula Clean Energy, ex-PG&E, dad. Love you guys. First 15 years of my career, I worked at International Paper and was an environmental consultant to oil companies. And I was on air quality. And it's neat. Whenever you burn something, air being 21% oxygen, 78% nitrogen, you get oxides of nitrogen. This is basic chemistry. And that's great if you have a control equipment following your combustion system, because you can revert those oxides of nitrogen back to N2, molecular nitrogen. And when you have volatile organic compounds, that's the unburnt stuff, you can combust, raise the temperature and burn those. So we have good temperature control here. We have people like me making sure that the emissions are good. I have some bad news for you. Your stove does not have a Sven looking after the emissions. And what we now know, and it's scary and sad and aggravating, is that when you have a natural gas stove or propane stove, natural gas is CH4, propane is C3H8, you get 2 compounds of particular interest, one being benzene, which is an aromatic cyclical compound, and it's carcinogenic. Now, this is new news. It's like cigarette smoking in the 60s. Pat, if you were smoking cigarettes now, I say, I love you, man. Please stop. Over this, I did a backpacking trip and I thought about ethics and the right to speak up and to tell people whom I care about that I love them and that I care about them. And it's like, it's easy to say things like, Greer, there's a bus coming. It's going to hit you. Get out of the way. It's very easy for the public to say that. But to say, hey, we as a city, we as a utility are allowing, without educating the public, and that's part of our duty, that we are having these chemicals in the kitchen, in our homes, that's causing asthma and cancer in our citizens. That's sort of not cricket to me. Oh, I got 48 seconds. Oh, thank you. I thought I only had 4. So what I'm asking is for you guys to consider and to direct the utility to do. We put out a PSA every month, public service announcement, and to put out a PSA saying, hey, we have just learned about this because this is new chemistry. And we would like to inform you and say there are options that are better, like induction, cleaner, faster, more convenient, cheaper than gas. And that's what I'm asking. And then even better, if we really care, because we're going all electric, would be to add a rebate as part of the utility rebate program. Those are the 2 things. Thank you, guys.
Our next speaker is Herb B.
Chair Stone and committee members, tomorrow is Rosh Hashanah, which is start of a 10-year period, sometimes called the High Holy Days in Judaism, or the Days of Repentance, or the Days of Awe. And these holidays begin at sundown on the evening before. And I recall the Rail Committee that Councilmember Julie Lithcott-Hames had noticed that there was a public meeting scheduled for the evening of the 1st, and which starts the 10th day, which is October 10th, October 2nd, which is the 10th day or Day of Atonement. And somebody who was aware of that told the organizers of it. And I want to understand what Councilmember Lithcott-Hames said is the meeting was shifted because of that. this evening at sunset, which in Palo Alto is at 7:13, which is not that far from now, starts Rosh Hashanah. And it seems to me there are people who are getting ready to go or going to sitting out for services. There are others who will be busy doing that rather than coming to this meeting or watching it on some kind of device, which they wouldn't be doing in the synagogue. And I don't see, schedule for the meeting by times, expecting it to take. And I recall there was a memo in the packet that one of the recruiters, I think it was Peckham, said they couldn't make the interview. And I don't know why, was they did the recruitment for 2 city clerks in my recollection. So if it seems to be that the time you'd be taking would be running into that period this evening of the start of Rosh Hashanah, it might be better just to continue this meeting until the end of the 10-day period so that everyone will have an opportunity who wants to come and participate at home by teleconference or just watch the meeting, whereas they might be unable to do that because of that conflict. And I noticed that when we have Easter week or Lunar New Year's, somehow an effort is made to have many days that would otherwise have meetings, not have meetings. But here for this period, it seems there's an effort to have meeting schedule of various kinds during the 10-day period. Thank you.
Chair Stone, it looks like someone has raised their hand on Zoom after the cutoff period. Would you like to invite them to speak?
Sure.
Our next speaker is Jennifer.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. I would like to support Herb's comment. For the last several years, the SFO Roundtable has scheduled a meeting on the highest on Yom Kippur and various other holidays. And so I know a lot of people aren't very sensitive to that, but it matters for a lot of citizens who might be very active and want to participate. So thank you.
That concludes general public comment.
Great, thank you, and thank you to the speakers, and definitely hear your concerns about the timing. We're going to make every effort that we can to be done by 7 o'clock. We've just got one item. This item's already been continued, so we're not anticipating. Oh, thank you. Sorry. So I was saying that we're making every effort to finish this meeting before 7 o'clock. This item's already been continued. We're just interviewing 2 candidates today. The interviews are scheduled for 20 minutes. So if we're efficient in our work, we should be able to get out of here by 7 o'clock, and people can start their Rosh Hashanah celebrations. So I'll turn it over now to staff for action item 1, executive recruitment process review for the council appointed officer, the city attorney. All right, turn it over. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Stone and committee members. I'm Sandra Blanche, HR Director, and I'm joined by Nick Raish, our Assistant Director of Human Resources. We're here for the second follow-up session on the selection of an executive recruitment firm to help us in finding our next city attorney. As you all know well, this is a critically important position and one of only 4 council-appointed officers that report to you. Also includes the city manager, city clerk, and city auditor. On September 9th, we met to review the initial proposals from 3 highly skilled executive recruitment firms and received direction to invite the recruiters to answer follow-up questions. And we also committed to return with a draft brochure with the content of a brochure to begin deliberations. I will now hand the presentation over to Nick, who's going to help us through the steps before us tonight.
Good evening, committee members. Nick Raish, Assistant Director of Human Resources. It's always a pleasure to see you all. This evening, we will be holding public interviews with 2 executive recruitment firms for the purpose of sourcing candidates and aiding in the selection of the city's next city attorney. In your memo for this meeting, you received an updated timeline of the process of this executive recruitment, as well as answers to some initial questions and discussions that occurred on September 9th. You additionally have a draft set of content for a potential advertising brochure, which we will discuss tonight. Bob Murray and Associates and Terry Black and Company will both be providing brief overviews of their proposals tonight and then be prepared to answer questions from the committee. The process for tonight is that we will go in alphabetical order, with Bob Murray and Associates presenting and answering questions first, followed by Terry Black and Company. After presentations and questions, each firm after presentations and questions from each firm, we will then transition into deliberations and selection of which firm will handle this recruitment. It is important to note that the brochure that we are going to be discussing tonight is content only. It is not a final product, and it is meant to provide overall high-level guidance for this committee to consider. It will not replace individual stakeholder engagement that the selected firm will do once selected, which includes one-on-ones with the full council, but it gives us an excellent jumping-off place to begin those discussions. Tonight, from Bob Murray and Associates, we're joined by Valerie Phillips, who is the president and owner, who is currently online, and we will be joined by Terry Black, from Terry Black and Company, who is the president and owner, and we will add her into the Zoom call once Valerie's section is completed. With that, before we invite our first executive recruitment firm to present and answer questions, are there any questions from the committee for staff?
Yeah, Vicky.
Yes, I'm just curious if you could share with us why the 3rd recruiter is not here tonight.
Yes, Peckham and McKinney had several staffing issues that then at the last minute led them not to be available, none of which were related to holidays or religious reasons. Other prior engagements prevented them from making it.
Okay, but they are still in the running.
They have an interest in being considered, even though they are unable to participate in the interview.
Thank you.
All right, sounds good. Let's do public comment before we get into the interviews.
Our first speaker is Herb B.
Hi, committee members. I sent you a letter that has been received and is included in public letters. That's for people who are unable to see it on the HTML agenda on the city's website. I believe that the criteria you set for judging council appointees, which is I've seen 2 words used. One is goals, and prior to that, objectives, for which you develop key performance indicators with with the CAOs in closed session. Once you determine what they are public records, and it seemed it would be helpful in the recruitment materials to indicate what they are for the current city attorney, and with indicating that this is one of the things that would be discussed with with whomever is selected by the council to fill the position, and until you agree with CIO on what they are, you have the right to be discussing what they should be in closed session. But once they are decided upon, I believe they're public records, and they should be included and made public whenever you have, say, a meeting on evaluation, so that people can speak to you before closed session directly on that, rather than talk about whatever issue they want to talk about. And they should be indicated also in the recruitment brochure, and to indicate that this is what they are now, but in the time that you be interviewing the applicants for recruiter, they may want to have some idea. And also, when you have people who apply for the job, for the vacancy, they should know what they are, and what, so that they can indicate in their whatever interview process you have for an appointment, how they feel about that, and how they might want them to be different. There's no reason to keep them secret once they've been decided upon for each CAO. And unless that process is indicated in the recruitment materials, that's one thing that I believe should be available to potential applicants. And also, when you have your CAO evaluations before the council, that they should be available before then, so that the public will come up instead of feeling they should be talking about Ukraine or Palestine or alien invaders from outer space. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jennifer.
Thank you for doing this important work. I sent a written comment previously regarding who leads on legal and quasi-legal issues on projects where other city departments are involved, such as the city's fast track policy on aircraft noise. I have also written to the Finance Committee about performance indicators. These two topics, leadership on legal issues and how to measure performance, are really one and the same. So it happens that if there are more than one staff group in the city in charge of something, some things can fall through the cracks, or they could be done better. A recent example, the city responded to the San Francisco Airport DEIR with a brief and good letter, but it unfortunately begins by stating that Palo Alto is impacted by SFO departure paths. The city is under arrival paths. I have suggested that the city print a revised version before the letter is shared with the community, and it should be shared. It's been maybe a month or two now. So this is a clear example of where city attorney involvement would be needed. I do know that in previous years, we have had more diligent coordination, and I believe it was because the coordination with the city attorney was stronger. Also, there was more transparency with the community. The policy that I'm referring to, Fast Track, is a policy that resulted after several months of citizen advocacy, at least 2 council meetings, and also policy and services recommendation. So it really involves, there are expectations from residents about this work. So there are several other specific tasks in the Fast Track policy that I look forward to following up on. But I do ask that when all is said and done, it should be very clear who is responsible for what. And that way, it's easier to have the proper outreach with the community. Thank you so much.
That concludes public comment on agenda item 1.
Okay, thank you. We'll get into our interviews. I believe we have Bob Murray and Associates first. Okay, welcome, Valerie. Thanks for being here.
Thank
So
you for
you
having me. Good evening, everyone. I'm Valerie Gaeta Phillips, president and owner of Bob Murray and Associates, based out of Sacramento, but from the Bay Area. Just a quick little bit about our background. Latina-owned firm. I own the firm with my husband. We came from the private sector, high-tech executive level recruiting, working with venture capital firms there in the Bay Area, and transitioned to this niche about 12, 13 years ago, and bought the firm about 11 years ago from Bob. So we're a boutique size firm, primarily conducting executive level recruitments for municipalities, counties, special districts, state, in the 11 Western states, along with Texas. We are headquartered in Roseville, right outside of Sacramento. My family's all still there in San Jose. So whenever I conduct recruitments in the Bay Area, I'm always staying there. Most recently, and I think we included this in our proposal, we just completed Livermore City Attorney recruitment. My husband just kicked off Morgan Hill City Attorney recruitment last week. I also just completed the State Bar Executive Director recruitment, which was had to be an attorney. All the recruitments for them have to be attorneys, and I've done quite a few. So, boutique size firm, we average about 12 to 14 weeks for an executive recruitment. And we meet with all the stakeholders in the beginning of the process individually, and then write up a summary report of what we heard. A lot of that is input into the brochure that you guys will provide the job description, but we input kind of that ideal candidate, those soft skills. The search usually goes live within 2 weeks of the kickoff meeting. And I put together a really detailed timeline that lays out all those different milestones so you know what to expect. So the search goes live. It's usually live for about 5 weeks. I provide a weekly update to my point of contact. That could be all of you, all of the council blind copied, or whoever. If there's an ad hoc committee, it's to the ad hoc committee. But that happens weekly, and that just gives you the feedback that we're getting from potential candidates. Our outreach is pretty robust. We have close to 50,000 followers on our social media. That's more than all of our competitors combined. I think that's just that leans back onto our private sector background in high tech. So we really utilize social media. We also have a newsletter that goes out to about 7,000 folks twice a month that lists all our recruitments, announcements, anything like that. So the search is open 5 weeks, closes. We run public records on the top candidates. And for city attorney, general counsel searches, we're averaging about 25 applicants for mostly like Northern California. Southern California gets a little more. And I think it's just because the Bay Area is so expensive, cost of living, that factors in, and recruitments tend to be a little bit incestuous, but not always. But we have really great outreach for all of our recruitments. But city attorneys, we don't get as many as we would like a city manager search, just because I think attorneys tend to be a little more careful about what they apply for and what they do. They're very particular about the recruitments they apply for. So, I handhold my clients through each step of the process, closing with the updates, recommended finalists, sitting down in closed session and discussing the candidates I interviewed, those I recommend, those I don't recommend, provide the public records if anything comes up, discuss any of the candidates that maybe weren't screened. You get to see the full applicant list, and then you get to see the resumes, cover letters. I include a questionnaire in every recruitment that I conduct. And that questionnaire has about 4 or 5 questions that are based on what I heard from you in the kickoff meeting. But it also has kind of those nosy questions that HR can't ask, which is, what are your expectations for salary? How much notice do you need to give your current employer? Are you going to commute? Or do you live nearby? Are you going to have to buy or rent nearby? So I try to front load my clients with all that information. That way there aren't any surprises. When you land on a candidate, you'll kind of have an idea of, okay, they need to get 45-day notice. They're going to have to move. So maybe they'll ask for assistance for moving expenses. So I really try to make sure that you know all that about each candidate that you end up moving forward. And then I'm also involved with the final round of interviews, and as well as references, background checks. We conduct backdoor references as well. And then with the negotiations as well. I know I'm talking kind of fast, but that's kind of the whole process, anywhere between 12 to 14, sometimes 16 weeks. So I'll be quiet and answer any questions you might have.
No, thank you. Appreciate it. And appreciate you taking the time to be here tonight. Questions from the committee? Yeah, go ahead, Vicki.
All right. Well, first, Ms. Phillips, congratulations on this firm that you run and own. And thank you for submitting a proposal to us and for joining us tonight. So the city attorney position is a little distinct in that it's not, staff in the classic sense of performing city functions. It's really counsel providing legal advice to everybody from the executive leadership team on down and to council. So it's kind of a unique spot. What implications does that have for the search in your mind? So, I believe you do a lot of different positions in city government. So what distinctions are there for a city attorney search?
So, I have a lot of contacts already, but because we literally just completed Livermore as well as the State Bar, and we just announced both of those as well. So we know a lot of folks, and people talk. I typically attend the lawyer conference through the league every year, and that's in the spring, and I speak at those events. So I've really built up that network. And I always kind of plug into my network of, okay, who do you recommend for this position and why? And it's, finding out what the core values are of the city, of the council is going to be really important as well, because I want to make sure they're bringing forth someone who, I just heard someone talk about transparency and, what do they know about that? How do they currently guide their council to do that now in their current organization? If diversity is something that it's important to you, which it really kind of is to me, just because, that's a Latino-owned firm, making sure that the outreach represents that. So I think, having someone, probably who's already a city attorney would be fantastic. And we will get folks that apply that are, but you're also going to get a lot of folks that are like maybe an assistant city attorney or a deputy, number two, maybe with a bigger city. And knowing if you're open to those type of candidates is going to be really important when I screen candidates. We place the ads just like every other firm does. We put out the beautiful brochure just like every other firm does. But I think what we do that we do really well is the outreach. Our Rolodex, if I want to use an older term, is robust. And they'll all get the brochure, but what's more important are the folks that I'm calling and reaching out to through LinkedIn and the different groups that I belong to for this opportunity, and really making sure that their background and maybe even their city's values and core values, mission kind of align with Palo Alto. I mean, Palo Alto is unique, but there's other cities that I think have some similar, whether they have a university. I placed the city attorney in Santa Clara. That was a tough one. But, I navigated that council through that whole process and brought them that unicorn that they were looking for. So they're out there. It's just a matter of making the right calls.
Great. Okay. So I get that your outreach. That's terrific. What are city attorneys looking for as opposed to city managers or utilities directors or others?
Right.
What do they tend to care about as they're going through the search, and thus how do we attract the best city attorney talent?
Well, that's a great question. So I can tell you from candidates that I've called, most are looking to see how the council gets along and how they treat staff and how they treat each other, that kind of decorum that you might have with each other. And it's okay to disagree. But I've worked with clients that, have screaming matches during council meetings, and it's really tough, especially city attorneys or general counsels, to attract those folks to apply for clients like that. I haven't witnessed that with Palo Alto, so I think, that's a plus. But I always tell my clients, candidates are watching your council meetings just to get an idea of who you guys are. So please behave. So that's always kind of the number one thing. And then in the Bay Area, I think what's competitive is compensation as well. It's pretty competitive. So those are the kind of the two things that I see that attorneys are looking for. What's the council like?
Do they care at all about the scope of legal work?
Well, yes, that too. I mean, I think it has to be, I think for the right candidate, it has to be something kind of exciting and a new, it doesn't have to necessarily be a new challenge, but just coming to a new organization will be a new challenge. So I do think that does fall in, but the top two are the other things that I mentioned. And I definitely think the work is always what's interesting to really good candidates as well. They'll see it as an opportunity rather than a challenge.
Great. So last question, because I want to give the time back to my colleagues here. I don't think I heard you mention in the process, and maybe I missed it, the possibility of having a panel of sitting city attorneys actually participate at some time in screening applicants. What do you think about that as a process?
So we
piece of the
just did
process?
that for the city of Livermore. Not all my clients do that, but yes. And that could be built in to the first interview or the final round of interviews. That's really up to council. I can lay it out a couple different ways and then customize the recruitment so that we can do it that way. But we just did that with Livermore. We
So
had.
what are the pros and cons of doing that, though? Like, what would one consider in making that decision?
Well, I think confidentiality. It depends at what step you have that panel involved. If you have them involved in the first round of interviews, that tends to be closed session with council. I think that's one of the big things. And if you have folks that are number twos that are candidates, sometimes folks that are current city attorneys will say, well, I'm not sure if she or he are ready for that opportunity because they haven't done this, this, and this. They tend to see it through a lens as a current city attorney. So that's kind of the only kind of negative I've seen, if you want to say that. But overall, it's been
Wait,
positive.
sorry, that's a negative as opposed to a positive, that they can see it through the lens of the job, people who hold the job?
I do think it can be, because I think they're not seeing the potential. I think attorneys can be very black or white sometimes. And so it's kind of that gray area of like, okay, I think she's ready to be a city attorney and this is why. But if she hasn't checked off every box, sometimes that can work against the candidate.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Pat?
Thank you. First, thanks for your updated brochure that included the dates that you've been hiring for city attorney or related positions.
Mhm.
I guess one of the things I want to ask is how you mentioned kind of your online presence. So tell us a little more on how you identify candidates or bring candidates in to the pool.
Okay, so are you referring, so like LinkedIn, we have a very strong presence and we belong to all the different type of groups, bar associations, affinity groups follow us. And so whenever I post something, they share it with their network or their members. We also have upgraded accounts through our LinkedIn, and it enables me to kind of type in some of the things that I might be looking for. City attorney with experience, and I can type in different skill sets that I'm possibly looking for, and it'll feed me back lists of names of folks. And then I contact them, whether it's directly through LinkedIn or a phone call. And then we have our own database of over 45,000 applicants. Now, they're not all attorneys and general counsel, but I can sort through mine and it'll put out what we call a help list. And I'll really kind of target Northern California, Bay Area, but it's going to be all of California. And then it gives me a list of everyone who's applied or signed up for a newsletter. It'll give me kind of the names and titles and their cities. And then I go through and make my contacts and calls as well. That's also plus with the ads and when the brochure gets mailed out as well.
Okay, thanks. One clarification when Vicki was asking about kind of the prospect of having peers from other neighboring agencies, city attorneys. It sounded like you were thinking that they might be in the interview meeting with the council.
Not usually with the council. We just set it up with two panels, so they're their own separate panel.
If we included that group.
Yes. So but we could do however you want. But how we just did it.
I'm just to clarify. I'm for everybody. I'm assuming that would not be done with the council, and each of the peer review or not peers, each of the stakeholder group interviews would be separate from the council.
Correct.
Okay, and then I guess I'm interested in you. In your brochure, you said the strongest candidates are often those who are successful and content in their current positions and need to be sold on a new opportunity. And it sounded like from your answer to my earlier question that you'd look at that database to kind of see what look like some target candidates that you'd reach out to. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
We do that for all of our recruitments, but yeah, typically, because a lot of these folks, they're not necessarily looking at the ads in Western City or the Daily Journal to see what city attorney positions are posted out there. It's just that phone call that they receive or a text message from me or a message through LinkedIn kind of saying, hey, this is a new opportunity. And then having that conversation. Most of the folks that we place, that's how it happens.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
One thing you mentioned is the cost of living factor, and we have experienced that here with CAOs in the past, and of course with staff, and that's just I think one of the big issues with just employee retainment across the Bay Area. I'm curious, you talked about it a little bit in your introduction, but can you talk a little bit more about kind of how that goes into your search, the conversations you have with the applicants? Like, how do you, if they're understand if they're already local, not a problem. But
Right.
if it's a competitive candidate from outside the area, how do you really kind of dive in a little deeper on that and really kind of explore their real understanding
Right.
about the cost of living, and are they willing to stick around? Because we don't want to, of course, go through this whole process and the person stays for a year.
I agree. And so I do ask the questions about what homework have you done? Have you looked at Zillow, Realtor.com? Have you looked at rent? Have you looked at, purchasing a home? Have you talked to the family about relocating? What's your draw besides just the position? I think that's also kind of it's not always, but I do think it's important when someone's applying from outside the Bay Area in particular to find out why. Why are they applying? Because sometimes someone will see the compensation and it starts with a 4 or it's in the high 3s. That's where I really kind of drill down and make sure, okay, tell me what homework you've done on the cost of living. What zip codes have you looked at? What areas? So I can ask those nosy questions that sometimes HR can't ask. I think that's really important. Sometimes the draw could be, I placed the city attorney in Santa Clara and his draw is his daughter's at Stanford. And so it allowed him to rent a place and see his daughter and his wife, and they could, so that made sense. So knowing what's the draw, sometimes it is something like that. Sometimes it's someone who lived in the Bay Area, maybe didn't sell their home, rented it, and left to take another opportunity, but now they want to get back. So I will ask those questions and make sure that you guys know all of those details when selecting a candidate.
Great. Appreciate it. And then one follow-up, if you're able to answer it, you did mention that the Santa Clara attorney placement was a challenging one. I don't know if that was because
Did I say that?
you mentioned that attached to they have a university
Yeah, so
there.
I conducted the city attorney search and my husband conducted the city manager recruitment. And it was during a lot of kind of chaos that was happening with the council.
Okay.
I will tell you, they were all very lovely to work with. I had no problems working with them. They had an outside contract city attorney at the time because they had let go of their city attorney and the city manager. So that's
Yeah.
what made that challenging. People were looking at that like, oh boy. So we
Yeah,
didn't
that
get
makes
as many
sense.
applicants, but we had quality candidates, not a lot, but we had
Cool.
them that
Just
were
wanted
up
to
for
make
it.
sure that it wasn't that we're also not since we also have a complex city with a lot
Right.
of
No, it
similarities to
didn't have
Santa
anything to
Clara,
do
that
with
we're
that.
not looking at something similar to that. Great.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Mhm.
Just a real quick
Yeah.
follow-up.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up from me. You mentioned in response to Pat's question about reaching out to certain candidates to see if they might get interested, and you talk about the draw. What would you sell about Palo Alto? Like, what would you say about us to entice them?
So to
About the
me, and
work
because
here.
I'm from the area, So I know like the downtown, the university, complex city with some, very, when I think I pulled up some of the goals of the city, and they might have been from the website, about climate and housing. I think all of those will be attractive to the right candidates. And I do know candidates where those kind of things are important. Someone brought up the airport. I mean, so someone who wants to take on these challenges that I think are really more opportunities. It's a beautiful city too. So I think that's a plus to be able to work in a lovely city like Palo Alto. I think working for a council that may not agree all the time, but are civil and respectful is huge. So to me, those are some of the selling points for someone that would want to, be open to another opportunity, even though they might be happy where they're at. It might be somebody coming from a little bit smaller size city, and this would be a growth opportunity for them. So I look at all those different types of potential candidates when I'm conducting my outreach. And like I mentioned, a gentleman who had a daughter there at Stanford, I know city manager candidates. I know it's not city attorney whose kids are going to Stanford. So, knowing these certain things, I get to know my candidates and some of their personal things and what drives them. So I'll immediately kind of know some of the folks that I would be calling for your opportunity.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, thanks so much. We appreciate your application and being here tonight to answer some of our questions.
All right. Well, thank you for considering me and my firm.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to our next, which is.
So I just let Terry know of Terry Black and Associates that she can join, and we'll be next up. So as soon as she's in, Mahia, if you would be so kind as to let us know.
Looks like Tracy from Terry Black just joined.
So even though that says Tracy on the screen, I can confirm that is Terry. Hello, Terry.
Hi, let me just change that real quick. Sorry about that. Good evening.
Hi, welcome. Thanks for being here. So we're going to do for about 20 minutes. You can provide an introduction, and then we'll take the rest of the time to ask you any questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. And I know I watched the last committee meeting, so hopefully I can address some of your concerns and questions in the overview. But Terry Black & Company is almost 20 years old in 2026. I've been in the recruiting industry for 25 years now. We've always been a boutique firm by intention. The reason I started the firm was to ensure that we could provide quality, high-touch services for a select small group of clients. We never sought out to be a large firm that served the masses. So we have a long history of working in Palo Alto. Palo Alto has been a client since 2012, and we have a strong presence in the Silicon Valleys, I think you all know, and we're very proud of our record in diversity. So I know you've read the proposal. Our process is doesn't differ much than our competitors, but we do spend a lot of time, I will say a lot of resources up front, getting our arms around the organization and the candidate profile. With the organization, we have a little bit of a head start, given that we've been doing work with Palo Alto for a while, and recent work. We're at the final stages of the fire chief recruitment as we speak. With respect to the city attorney recruitment, Suzanne Mason would be my partner on this recruitment. Suzanne has a lot of experience with recruiting, was a former assistant city manager in Palo Alto when Jim Keene was city manager, has experience working with Molly. She would be here tonight, except she is celebrating Rosh Hashanah with her family this evening. So at the beginning of the process, we, of course, speak with the council members to get their input on the candidate profile and priorities for the position. We'd certainly be interested in speaking with Molly. I did recognize that Councilmember Burt pointed out an error in our proposal, and I apologize. In terms of getting feedback on the candidate profile. I think it states in the proposal that we'd work closely with the city manager. And of course, we love Ed Chicada, but we recognize this is a council appointed position and work closely with the committee as well as in partnership with HR being our staff support. But in this case, we'd also like to speak with Molly, and I think the committee would agree with that. But also because fit is so important, it wouldn't necessarily have to happen before the recruitment open, but we would love to have brief conversations with each member of the executive team. Molly is an institution in Palo Alto, she and her team are such a valuable resource and it's such a great executive team. We seek to add value and not disrupt. So it's easy to recruit qualified candidates, but finding that those candidates who we think are going to be the best fit for the council and would also work well with the executive team, I think would be paramount. So that is the front end of the process. Of course, we produce the, working in concert with HR, produce the recruitment brochure, and with your approval, and then we're off to the races. We do an electronic version of the brochure. We also do a printed version still. I wish we didn't have to, but today we're competing for people's attention, and not a recruitment goes by that some awesome candidate wasn't physically handed a copy of the brochure by a colleague, their boss, etc. So we still do printed brochures, and we have the League of Cities conference coming up too. So at conferences, it's somewhat handy to have the visual printed material out there. Let's see, so the recruitment, once the recruitment opens, it's open for about a month. We need a month to have potential conversations with potential client or candidates. So we're physically mailing, we're emailing, we're phone calling, we're spending a lot of time on LinkedIn, we're at the league conference, and we've got a strong network in this space. And in fact, the city attorney that we placed in San Mateo, Prasanna, is the first vice president of the League Department of City Attorneys. So, and this is it's a small world, and it's a very cooperative, helpful world. And we're constantly talking to people, getting referrals for potential candidates. So that process and having those conversations with potential candidates takes about a month. And then after the recruitment closes, Suzanne and I are doing the paper screening of the applicant materials. We're doing the screening interviews. It typically takes about 2 to 3 weeks. And then we come back to the council with a full written report and our recommendations about the finalists to move forward. And we would help facilitate the council interviews. We prepare all the materials, help with deliberation to the extent that we can. And then, of course, handle negotiations, the background and reference checking and so forth. So the process can take as long as 4 or 5 months. It doesn't have to take that long. It really depends on how quickly we can get everything organized on the front end to get going. And as I indicated, we have a little bit of a head start, having done recent work with Palo Alto. We're a little bit familiar with the city attorney's office. We did recruit an assistant city attorney for Molly in 2021 in Cayo. So, and a lot of other recruitments since then. So we do have a little bit of insight, and I know there's an interest in getting started pretty quickly. We would not just look to municipal government for potential candidates. We would also tap into the private law firms that serve local government. So, the big ones, the little ones, we've gotten, I would say half our candidates that we've placed over the past 10 years have come either directly from private firms, or they have both experience in cities as well as in the private firms. So And then I would just add that we are known in the industry. One of the reasons we stay small is we like to spend a lot of time with our candidates and ensure that each candidate has a good experience in the process, because we consider ourselves to be an extension of our client's brand for that period of time that we're engaged in the recruitment. And it takes a lot of energy. And if somebody really wants to be competitive, it takes a lot of energy and time and investment for them to do the research, prepare and show up as their, their best self on the days of the interviews. So we spend a lot of time with the finalists, offering them, assistance, coaching. And it's oftentimes these days their first time interviewing for a city attorney position. And it's also could be their first time working with a recruiter. So we do a lot of hand holding. Only one person's going to get the job. And we want everyone to leave the process feeling like they had an enriching professional experience and that they feel great about Palo Alto, even though they didn't get the job. So we're known for high touch. And I'm confident, even in this really challenging market for great talent in local government, that we would be successful. So with that, I think I'll stop talking and address any questions or concerns that you may have.
Wonderful. Thank you. Turn it over to the committee. Pat?
Thank you. Well, hello again. One thing I didn't see in your proposal was you had 3 references and then a long list of cities that you work with. What I'm most interested in is in the last few years, who you've worked with for chief legal counsel positions, whether it was a city or other government agency. Can you, and we're kind of tight on time, but give me a sense of that?
Of course, Councilmember Burt, thank you for the question. So we were just retained by the City of Redwood City to do an assistant city attorney recruitment. We just finished last spring an assistant city attorney recruitment for Burlingame. Santa Clara Deputy City Attorney, December of 2024. Assistant City Attorney, Santa Clara, December of 2024. Actually 2 assistant city attorneys in December of 2024. Assistant City Attorney in Milpitas in 23. City Attorney in Mountain View 2021. I mentioned Assistant City Attorney for Palo Alto 2021. Fremont,
Okay.
October of 2021. Is that good enough?
Yeah, and just very, do you also deal with other non-cities that are government agencies?
We do special districts as well. General managers, assistant general managers, executive directors. We haven't done legal counsel for top legal counsel for a special district as of yet.
And last question. You're real familiar with our community and a lot of our hires. As you look at the broad candidate pool of people who we might consider qualified, I think there's a potential subset that are ones who are top caliber people or aspire to those kinds of roles and who would find the challenges of Palo Alto as being attractive. The breadth of the issues of our utilities, as some have said in the past, we're kind of a city that bats above our weight, and so do you anticipate, or do you think that is an opportunity not only to get the targeted folks, but folks who would work out here, because the very things that are challenging here are things that they find attractive to take on?
Yes, it takes a very, I would say, special person to serve at an executive level in Palo Alto. You really have to be on your A game. And if candidates are super ambitious and they want to play, even though given Palo Alto's size, it does fight above its weight, so to speak. If people want to challenge themselves and really, play at a world-class level, that's the type of candidate that we typically look for when we're recruiting for Palo Alto.
Thanks.
Vicky.
Yeah, thank you. And Ms. Black, nice to see you, and thank you for putting in a proposal tonight.
Nice to see you, Vice Mayor.
Just a quick preliminary question. You mentioned Suzanne having been here in the past. Did she happen to overlap with Molly?
Yes, she was there in 2015, 2016. So they did work together for a bit of time, for about 15 months or so. And then Suzanne was a lead recruiter on her assistant city attorney recruitment.
Cayo. Yeah, great. Okay, so sort of following up on what Pat was just asking you, so thinking about a city attorney specifically, separate from, city manager, city clerk, other positions, how do you attract the best lawyer? Like, what are they interested in? What do they want to have in a job? So, there's a lot of things about Palo Alto that would be good or bad for any executive team member, but what about lawyers? What are they looking for?
Yeah. Well, I would really look for Molly's insight on this, but what I would guess is, and this is true for other executives we recruit for the city, is they don't want to be bored, and they want a diverse portfolio of challenges and priorities. And we can promise them they won't be bored in Palo Alto, right? And then the other thing, that they're going to be interested in is are they going to have a council that's, engaged and passionate and interested? And I think you have a great relationship with Molly, and so that will be helpful. And then, the opportunities to work with outside counsel when appropriate, on when outside expertise is needed. So it really provides a rich portfolio for them to manage and to oversee and to be engaged in the things that they're most passionate about. So there's plenty to choose from. Of course, they probably have, one or two things that are of personal interest, and it differs candidate by candidate, but there's certainly a lot to keep somebody engaged, and that's not for everyone, right? So I would say, the B players, or somebody who's comfortable in a smaller, more, maybe even more of a predictable environment, or more traditional environment, this is not the right opportunity for them. We're looking for a very special breed here.
Yeah, thank you. And let's not forget the public and the press. So are there specific attributes of our city, since you know us pretty well, that you think would either be an asset or a hurdle in attracting these people who want? I mean, you described some generically, but are there things about us specifically, like if you had to call someone up and sell them a good lawyer, what might you highlight?
I would highlight one of the features that makes Palo Alto so different. There are many, many, many things, but I think the one thing that people either love or they are particularly challenged by once they get to Palo Alto, and just talking to the different staff over the many years, is the level of community engagement and involvement, and how well informed the community is.
Yeah.
So it's different that way. It's a little bit of Santa Monica, a little bit of Berkeley, but Palo Alto is its own unique thing. And I really think that is the and that's what we screen for. Is somebody going to be comfortable with that? Are they going to embrace that? Is that going to make them a better lawyer, a better department head? Can they mentor their staff that way? Can they support their staff that way? Because it's relentless, right? It's ongoing. And so I mean, I could talk about a lot of things, but that's the one biggest thing that we really have to screen for.
Yeah, just in the interest of time, just so I'm just quickly, I've been asking about using a panel of city attorneys, and I just want to know if that you sign on to that and what exactly you would think we would get out of that.
So you will hear, if you retain us, you will hear me talk a lot about the importance of confidentiality. So you can design any process you want, but the more people who are involved in the process, the more confidentiality is at risk, and the higher the degree of risk of losing good candidates. Our goal is to bring you the strongest, most impressive pool of people you and the council to choose from possible. And the bigger the process gets, the
Yeah.
chances of us being able to retain awesome candidates throughout the process diminishes a little bit.
Yeah, I get that. I just wonder whether positions that have more technical skill, like a utilities director did and an attorney might, where you have peers actually being able to evaluate that technical side, it might be something more worth trying to take the risk.
I'm not 100% opposed to it by any means. It's
All
all
right.
on the table.
Well,
Yeah.
that's down the road, but I appreciate you
Yes.
thinking out loud about it with me.
Yes,
All right, thank
of
you.
course.
My only question, and sorry if you've answered and I just missed it. Do you proactively reach out to those who are not applying, who you think might be interested?
That's how we find the best candidates typically. Yes.
Great.
Our candidates are the best candidates are, working really hard. They're busy. They're not necessarily looking for a job. And so that's why we have to do a multi-pronged approach to try to get their attention, have conversations with them, and to get them into the candidate pool.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. We appreciate you taking the time to both apply and be here tonight to answer questions, and we're going to deliberate now.
Great. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Okay. Staff have anything to? Okay, go ahead, Sandra.
Chair Stone, now that we've completed presentations, would you like to release Valerie and Terry as the council moves into deliberation and selection?
You know, that I was asking myself, is this deliberation always a public or is it a closed session? It's always public on
It's
this?
public, yes.
Yeah, but they can listen in either way. So yeah, I don't think it really matters.
Yep. I mean, I think nice if they're able to stick around. If we have any follow-up questions, I guess we could ask, but yeah, if they want to log off and enjoy their evening. Okay. So anything else from staff then? Okay, sounds good. Well, why don't we focus first then on seeing if we can select one of the three applicants before moving on to comments about the brochure draft. And thanks to staff for getting that turned around so quickly. So any initial thoughts? Vicki?
Well, I appreciate staff bringing us these strong candidates. A lot of experience in relevant positions and relevant towns. So, it's not a simple decision, that's for sure. I would suggest that we should retain Terry Black. I think that her colleague Suzanne, having overlapped with Molly here, I think her interest in speaking with Molly right off the get-go, the fact that she brought us Kayo, all of that, and knows our city very well is something that is meaningful to me, and kind of getting the fact that I think lawyers often move for more interesting, exciting work. I think that it's a little unique that way, that they really do want challenges, and she gets the additional challenges that the city brings. And I don't know, I'm just leaning that way, although I do appreciate all the applicants.
Thank you. And I'll just say, I agree. Pat?
I agree also. That issue of both understanding what is potentially attractive about Palo Alto and having that as an important part of their recruitment process, I think is real important. There is a good advantage to that. They do know Palo Alto well. I think Yeah, so I think we're all in agreement, so I'm good with Terry Black. And I should say on Peckham, who didn't have a chance to have the virtual interview that we had here. And I reviewed their brochures, worked with them in the past. I was struck that theirs wasn't we got their brochure, not a customized proposal, unlike the other two. So I'm very comfortable with going forward with Terry Black.
Yeah.
All right, I'll move that we retain Terry Black. Recommend to whatever it is we need to do.
Okay, great. So we have a recommendation to the city council to retain Terry Black, seconded by Councilmember Byrd. Let's take the vote when the clerk's ready.
Just want to confirm with the maker and the seconder that this is the staff recommendation that also includes bullet point 2 for the city manager, to authorize the city manager or designee to execute professional services with Terry Black and Co. For a fee not to exceed 40,000 plus reimbursable expenses not to exceed 10,000 plus there's bullet points A and B. Are you okay with that? All the
I'm
above?
good with that.
All right, taking the vote. Vice Mayor Vinker,
Yes.
Councilmember Burton,
Yes.
Chair Stone,
Yes.
motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. All right. And thanks to all the applicants who applied. All right, so comments back on the brochure draft. And again, is a draft, my understanding is staff's just kind of looking for feedback as we continue to revise them. And we're not looking for really wordsmithing, but more general comments and direction.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
Any feedback you have at this point?
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, Pat.
Well, that kind of goes to that I do have comments, but it's kind of hard to do it other than real-time editing. And I'd like to just be able to get a editable copy and offer my comments. And if we each give them, and then staff can decide what they're going to incorporate or not, as opposed to us voting on that.
I have no problem with that type of process. I don't, Vicky, do you have thoughts?
Slightly different suggestion. So for one, we just retained someone whose job it is to do this stuff. So one, we might want to, go give them a crack at this. Two, I would really like it if we asked Molly to take a look at it and got her feedback on it. Because just generically, without wordsmithing at all, where'd my copy go? Here we go. So I think we need to find out from her how she would describe the top stuff she does, because I see her as a manager. I see her as someone who coordinates the legal function. And the first thing we have here is draft contracts. I bet it's been a few years since Molly's drafted a contract. So I think that process, I think a lot needs to kind of be looked at before we start even to wordsmith and redline this one.
So Molly has reviewed it and commented. I mean, I will say, she has oversight of the drafting that goes on to contracts.
Yes, that is very different. And she manages a team and she decides when legal work goes outside and inside. I just don't see a lot of stuff about the executive functioning here and these key responsibilities. And so I think, I don't know if she saw a draft in the normal course or if she really was asked for input in this, but I think we should get that more specifically. And just a little more about the experience we're looking for. And is there management experience? Is there executive experience? How many years of experience? Just that type of thing. I would love to see a slightly different content before we started wordsmithing. That's my thought. And I think Molly and Terry Black could do a really good sort of revise on that, and then we could spend our time better.
Yeah, so you will have an opportunity to speak to Terry Black. And so she'll receive your input. We'll provide her this copy. As she mentioned, she's spoken to Molly, but we can certainly loop back with Molly on these comments.
Mr. Chair, can I?
Yeah.
Clarification. So that the key responsibilities section of this draft is the office, not her role. My apologies on that confusion. And if we could focus potentially the committee on just the candidate profile. Everything else in this document is standard language we use across many of our executive recruitments that we've done over the last year that we've compiled. And it's the candidate profile, which is also called themes and options for committee review, that has some of the high level areas that there would be interest from staff in knowing which of these are the best top three or top four that you think are most important each as we refine it more going forward. If that's available tonight, excellent. If not, then Terry Black and company will be doing one-on-ones with all council members, and some of these themes will come up again in those meetings.
But the top three what?
Top three themes. So if you look at the section that's called candidate profile, the very first theme is a strategic thought partner to council and the city manager. So that's one theme. The second theme is a translator of the complex into the actionable. The third is a governance and ethics champion. So these are buckets or areas of expertise, knowledge, and abilities you would want this person bringing to the role. And so the idea around this section was, are some of these resonating more with the committee than others, or do some you think don't need to be on here at all, to start limiting what we hand over to Terry Black and company as they begin their meetings with you all?
Oh, sorry, we did.
So we're limiting it to three. And we're not putting anywhere, gee, we've got this cool new utility, or we got this cool utilities thing that's very different. Most cities don't have. We have an airport. I mean, like in terms of the legal work, it's like a real different portfolio than most city attorneys have, which would be a pro and a con for applicants. And I just don't see it super clear on what you do as a Palo Alto city attorney. I would love to see that out. I mean, she has, like you say, a staff of so many, we outsource this many, we do like the scope to name the legal work, I think would be helpful. But I would want Molly to chime in on that.
Great. And my apologies. I was more saying for tonight's purposes, if each committee member said, these are the three I like the most, then we could end up with 9, and then that could help move this along. But it sounds like the one-on-one meetings with each stakeholder will be the best way to continue to move this forward, including additional input from Molly, which Terry was very clear about seeking.
So actually, I had a lot of comments on this that I wanted to be able to provide more thoughtfully, but a number of them had to do with things that Vicky brought up, and I think the idea of having. I hear you that Molly went over this. I'd like to make sure she really scrutinizes it. Second, I think there is a value to having Terry Black offer any potential edits. Third, the more general stuff for the community and things. I realize now that wasn't written custom for this position, but a lot of my comments are on that too. I think this really can be improved upon. Yeah, it's both a better zeroing in on what are potential the things that we'd want a candidate to be attracted to in Palo Alto, and a lot of that was what we talked about with Terry Black tonight, and to incorporate those, and then yeah, I do agree. One of the things that was popping up earlier is, top lawyer, this is very much an executive and management position that has to have that strong legal expertise, but not necessarily have the depth in even important matters. Molly had no planning experience. She really had half of her public career over the SFO. So I think those are important things. I did want to ask too, I want to be able to talk about this outline a little bit. It'll be brief, but we're going to have an opportunity to do that subsequent to talking about the brochure. Okay. So I would certainly value, if Molly's already looked at, I don't know how many changes, but if we get an improved version before it comes back to us for suggested edits, that would be that much better. Yeah.
I was just going to say, so it's one thing if Molly looked at it. Did Molly revise it? I didn't get I'm not sure that happened.
So I can't speak to that at the moment without going in the system and checking. But as a part of the process that is clearly being outlined by the committee and will be adopted by council, it sounds like Molly's input on the brochure before it's finalized will be a critical stakeholder for Terry Black and Company to convene with.
Okay. I agree with the feedback provided, so I don't need to repeat it. Okay, then staff's good on that type of direction and understanding then of kind of the sequencing.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. All right, and then Pat, you wanted to go back and talk about the kind of the phases.
So thanks for some revisions. There were some things that stood out. Let's see. In the candidate screening, the third bullet now says presentation of recommended top candidates to full council and compensation discussion. Just minor, but I think it's really presentation. If they want to present them, fine, but it's an interview process. And so we don't want to just say it's not presentation, it's interview. That's the main thing that we do there. I assume that's that same step, right? That's what you're talking about
So
there?
no, that's a separate step. So
Okay.
the first closed session with the full council.
Okay, where are the interviews? I see final interviews. Does that mean interviews of the final 3 candidates or final interviews of a selected?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Burt, for that question. So in November, December timeline is when the posting closes, Terry Black and Company will come back and they will present in closed
Got it.
session and they will
Okay.
say,
But it was just for interest of time, the third bullet in the finalist selection where it says final interviews, is that meaning interviews of the 3 finalists?
yes. So before that, the first bullet, panel interviews, that could be 6 or 7 candidates that make it to that. Final interviews could be your top 2.
And this has to be clear, who's doing what? Those panel interviews by the council?
Yes, and it doesn't say who does those yet, as discussed tonight with Terry Black and with Valerie from Bob Murray. The council may say, we also want a panel of subject matter experts at the same time as us, but city council as a whole in closed session will interview the candidates. You may have a panel component that happens also that has ELT members, subject matter experts, et cetera.
So I guess one of the questions is going to be after we get the applications, often the recruiter will say, here's my top 5 or top 10, first group, second group, or whatever. Then the council would make a decision, not just arbitrarily based on how many they want to interview, but how many they're really looking at those top ones. They look really promising. And so I think there needs to be that just delineated as one of the steps that we will do that under the candidate screening block, right?
Yes, that is the bullet you're referencing. The presentation of candidates is when you would say, of these top tier, we want to interview X number, and those would be invited to the panel interviews.
Just to lay that out, so everybody on the council will know that. We all know it, but
Great.
I think this needs to be just a little more clear on each of these. Okay. And then we have stakeholders. We had, is that right? Let's see. Executive. Panel interviews. That's by the stakeholders. Is that what you mean? Or no, or that's the big
Panel interviews is the placeholder for what you want it to be.
Okay, so where's the stakeholder interviews?
That could be a part of those. I'm sorry, let me clarify. When you say stakeholder interviews, do you mean in creating the brochure and figuring out how to advertise?
No, it's in the interview. So just a sec. So where it says panel interviews, now that I thought a moment ago you said that's where we might interview a larger number before we winnow it down.
May I will try to make it very brief, walk through these 3 stages in order. The presentation of the recommended candidates, the firm will come and tell you, these are my top 6 in tier A, these are my next 6 in tier B, and the council as a whole in closed session will say, we really only want to see the 4. The 4 in A, we don't think those other 2 make it. That will then move to the panel interview phase, which would be in closed session with the full council. and could include an additional second panel that could be other outside lawyers and subject matter experts, could include executive leadership team members. And then from that process, you might have one or two that make it through that go to final round
But
interviews.
in that panel, are you envisioning that those stakeholders or whatever would be in the meeting with the council?
There would be two separate panels.
Okay. And so let me just say that in city manager and I believe city attorney, where we really put this high focus, we've at different times had, well, really most time, I think, we had a community stakeholder panel that each council member selected one representative on. And then we had an executive leadership team panel. And I think there at different times they've either made their own recommendation, or I think subsequently said, no, it's much better if we simply get their insights and don't ask them to select who we should hire, but they provide insights. And now we're talking about this third group of essentially peers of neighboring city attorneys. I find a lot of value in all three of those. So I guess I want to hear from colleagues where we have both the panel interviews. We need to clarify. We have potentially an initial screening by the council of a higher number, where that might be something that we're going to determine actually in the previous block, and then stakeholder interviews. I don't know if a peer and stakeholder, something like that. So I think that those are my questions and comments.
I guess before I answered that, I would want to hear from Terry what impact that would have on the desirability of, applying to Palo Alto, to talk to, to go through all of those panels. And I think it's because, again, this is not someone who provides direct services to residents. This is someone who provides services to us at the city proper. And I don't know. So I'd just be curious about
for
that.
one comment on that. We haven't done this, to my recollection, haven't done this neighboring peers, but on the other two.
Just did it with utilities, I believe.
Oh, the peer cities. Okay, fine. But on these other two panels, those candidates are interviewing us too. And my recollection was feedback was they valued that. They got to sit down with community leaders. They got to sit down with the executive leadership team, and that was a reciprocal value on that one. And I'm guessing the other one wouldn't scare anybody off. I don't know. And if they were scared off, I don't know. That might be a telltale sign.
This area will definitely be a part of the one-on-one engagement that Terry Black and company do with each council member. It will not only be what are the things that you think make a successful city attorney for the city of Palo Alto, it will be what type of process allows us to get this done in the time we want to do it, gets the quality of product we want at the end, and gets the type of candidates. She's going to go through all of that. So I think this initial discussion will be great for her to watch. As she mentioned, she reviews these and watches these. But then those additional meetings with all of you and your colleagues will help inform the process.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I can see the value in it, but I'd want to hear from Terry as well. Okay, any other comments? All right, wonderful. Well, thank you, everybody. And on a Monday night, we are out of here before 7 p.m. So we're adjourned. Good night.